Good morning. Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. I'm Rabbi Era Sherman, live from Los Angeles at Sinai Temple. Hope everybody's doing well out there. We are here to speak about the intersection between sports and faith, where we interview figures in the sports world from around the world in different sports to hear about the inspiring stories and journeys that we don't hear or see on TV. We are joined this morning by my special guest all the way from the Holy Land, the land of Israel, from Benot Ashdod, living in Bat Yam. We are joined by Chelsea Hopkins. Good morning, Chelsea. How are you doing today?
How's it going? I'm doing great.
Great. So first of all, how's it going in Israel with the pandemic? Just tell us what's going on there.
Well, we're currently experiencing a shutdown. So you're not supposed to go you're not supposed to go farther than a 5-mile radius from your house. But being a professional athlete, if you're a first division athlete, the show goes on. So they're allowing us to practice and they're allowing us to play. So we do have like some type of special government document that says that we can travel beyond the 5-mile radius. We are allowed to practice. We are allowed to participate in games with absolutely no fans. And they're trying to, get our season to roll on here. So
let's go back to your journey. We actually haven't met in person, but we've been connected via social media, through Israel, through sports. Let's go back to where you're from. I believe in Las Vegas. And growing up, I saw a beautiful YouTube interview from your days in San Diego State by your dad being a basketball coach. What did that mean in terms of your dad being a basketball coach? Was it forced upon you? Was it something that you had to get out on the court all day? How did it become your own love, that it's something that you wanted to do with your life?
Well, I've kind of, always been a daddy's girl. My dad was a coach in Las Vegas for 20 plus years. He was the first Black coach to win a state championship.
Wow.
So I kind of just, was brought up in the game, always kind of following him around in the gym at a very young age, just kind of imitating what I saw, his players do. And I just kind of fell in love with it that way. Like I've been in the gym since I can remember. And I think that's kind of where it started. He definitely didn't force me, but I was kind of always running behind him. So it just made sense that I was going to play basketball no matter what.
And then what does that look like, playing basketball with your dad in community leagues and elementary, middle school? Is there a point that you get to that you realize, I have a talent that can take me beyond just, where everybody else is? Was there a point in your life that you realized, wow, I'm good, I can take this to the next level?
Well, I actually, growing up too, besides playing basketball, I was heavy into soccer. So I thought I was really good at both, performing on my AAU teams and such. And when I got to high school, I actually had to make the decision to play either basketball or soccer because they're the same season in Vegas. So you really can't do both. So that's kind of when I decided, okay, I'm going to go with my first love, which is basketball. And I had, interest even in high school from, Bishop Gorman, which is actually our top private school that, kind of wanted me to play there. And I was like, wow, people want me to play for their team. So, I must be kind of doing pretty good. So it's funny though, because my dad, being the crazy guy that he is, he was coaching at Mojave High School at the time. And he was like, no, I don't care if people want you. Like, you're going wherever I go, wherever I'm coaching, that's where you're going to be playing. And you're going to be by my side like you have been since you were, a baby. So I go to Mojave High School. My dad's the varsity men's basketball coach. I'm playing on varsity as a freshman, doing well. And I actually was playing AAU for a small Vegas team because my dad's very old school. So besides being recruited, to go to different high schools, I actually had some interest on the AAU circuit, which I don't know if your followers know what that is, but that's like travel ball where you play in the summer, and, you get to travel around. And my dad was like, just heavily against me, going to another state to play basketball or do any of that kind of stuff in the summer. But my best friend was playing for a team in California at the time. And she basically had to beg my dad to let me go and, play with her. Like, hey, we're best friends. We have to stay together like we've been doing. And, and the team kind of recruited me. So that's kind of really when I opened my eyes to the fact that like, wow, like I could really do something with basketball. I went from that small Vegas team in which I had, interest from, UNLV, Division I schools, but just, schools that were in, in the area. And I played one summer on this California team, and next thing you know, Duke is recruiting me, and Texas is recruiting me, and North Carolina and Cal and USC and all these schools that I couldn't even really imagine were showing just so much interest, just because I was playing on a national stage with other super talented players. And that's when it kind of became a reality. Like, wow, like I'm gonna go to college and play ball.
And what is that journey to Duke? Obviously, you said daddy's girl stayed home in Vegas. All of a sudden, you're traveling across the country. I mean, Duke at the great level, obviously on the men's side with Coach K, and the women's side, an amazing program. When you stepped on that campus into Cameron Indoor Stadium, what does that feel like? What does that look like? And what's the highlight from those 2 years you had at Duke?
I mean, it was super surreal. And, one thing about my dad and my parents, I was very academic. So in high school, I was salutatorian. I was second in my class. So when I got the opportunity to go to Duke at the time, they were the number 3 women's basketball program. It was basically the best of both worlds. Like, wow, I'm going to play high level basketball. I'm going to get a top notch education. Like, how can I turn this down? Even though I had other schools that were close by, I just felt like, hey, it's time to grow up a little bit. Not everybody gets this opportunity. So, you kind of have to jump on it and take it.
And so you go 2 years at Duke, number 3 in the country. And then you go to San Diego State, obviously back to sort of the West Coast. I read that you were looking for that business degree. That's got to be a hard decision to go back and leave the number 3 basketball school in the country because they don't have a business program. Take us through that journey when you're flying back west.
Yeah, it wasn't not so much because actually Duke has a business school, but you're right, they don't have a business like undergrad. But for me, it was more so just injuries and being super far away from home. Like I said, I was close to my family. I had a great start at Duke. My first 10 games, just as a freshman, I'm probably the 6th man. I'm coming off the bench. I'm playing, 17 minutes a game. I'm playing behind Jasmine Thomas, who's a great point guard for the Connecticut Sun in the WNBA as we speak. I'm playing behind her. I'm doing really well. And I think I remember it like it was yesterday. 10 games into the season, we're playing on the road at Western Kentucky and jumped up for a rebound. I landed awkwardly and I tore my meniscus. So that was the start of my snowball of injuries. So I came back 2 months later. This is my freshman year, far away from home, never been hurt before, never had surgery, did all that kind of stuff without my family, being there with me. And my teammates were super supportive, don't get me wrong, but, it's nothing like having your mom or your dad, when you're going through something difficult. So I came back and, I'm playing at the end of the season and not quite myself, not really, messing things up, but, just kind of out there, kind of making the teams even, not doing great, not doing bad, just kind of like whatever. And I was just really excited to finish the season because I'm like, wow, like, I had an injury, now I can use this summer to get strong, get healthy, start over, come back, have a great sophomore season. And basically the rule is at Duke, when you're a freshman, you get to go home for the whole summer. So I was really looking forward to that. But if you have an injury, then you have to check out basically with the doctor before you're released to go home. So this is like 3 days before I'm supposed to go to Vegas for the entire summer. And I have all these plans to just be great and come back. And I meet the doctor and she's like, your meniscus is still torn. She was like, wow. So you can go home for 2 weeks and then you can come back and have surgery and you can spend the summer with us and then get healthy and, hopefully play again. So for me, I'm like totally bummed out, because all these summer plans I had of just getting better and getting healthy kind of were derailed. So I come back to Duke. It's the beginning of my sophomore year after spending the summer there and having a second surgery. So that's 2 surgeries in a 6-month period. That's a lot. Yeah. So have the surgery, come back. We're at the start of my sophomore season. And I was just telling my coach, like, yo, like, I don't really feel right. Like, something's up with my knees. Like, I don't feel strong. I don't really feel healthy. And she was like, hey, it's just meniscus. Like, it's not ACL. You should be bouncing back from this. But obviously I had a problem because I did it 2 times in a 5-month period. So very short time frame. I did the same thing. And just me and the coach kind of butt heads after that. I think she took offense to the fact that I actually asked her to redshirt. Like, hey, I'm not going to just waste time here. Like, I want to play. I feel like I'm good. I'm here to play basketball. Like, but I don't want to play if I'm not healthy, if that makes sense. So we kind of butted heads after that. I spent my whole sophomore season because season was starting. So I couldn't really just up and transfer at the time. We're in preseason and we're training to get ready to go. And I spent my whole sophomore season pretty much just on the bench playing garbage time, if playing at all. And so at the end of my sophomore year, it was kind of easy decision for me. Like, look, I've battled all these injuries. Clearly me and the coach aren't seeing eye to eye anymore. They're a top school. They have recruits constantly coming in. And the coach is saying that, hey, we had you come in. Now we have another great point guard, coming in as well. And so for me, the decision was just easy to leave. At the time they had that penalty rule of if you transfer, you have to sit out. Sit out a year. Yep, exactly. So me, I need to sit out because I don't want to, if I'm going to play basketball, like I want to be good. And right now I don't have the body to really be good. So It was interesting. We actually played San Diego State in the Elite
Oh, wow.
Eight that year, or the Sweet 16, one of them. And I didn't play. We ended up beating them by like 8, and we're slapping hands and we're going down, the line. And the coach was like, the coach was Beth Burns at the time. She was like, hey, I have a spot for you, like whenever you're ready. And I'm thinking like, okay, first, I don't think a coach is supposed to be saying that to you. One, second, like, no, I'm not going to San Diego State. Like, whatever. Like, I'm at Duke.
Right.
Kind of thinking I'm high and mighty or whatever. And the next thing you know, I reopened my recruitment, and I'm like, I got to get home. And I didn't even really take I went to San Diego State for like a day, and I still had some top-notch schools that were pursuing me. But I just said, I want to be close to my mom. I want to be close to my dad. I want to be. I need family at this point more than I need, to be at a big time school. And I went to San Diego State for a day, and I just committed. And that's kind of what things took off for me.
So you talked about, just before we were on the air, athletes in action. And I asked you about your different faith. And you said that while you were in college, you joined this Athletes in Action, which I believe is a Christian group of Bible study. You don't really hear about that on the news, about athletes studying Bible together and looking at the scriptures. Take us through that journey. Did it start at Duke? Was it in San Diego State? Was it because of the Christian background that you grew up with? Was it because of perhaps some of the challenges that you faced, both in health and sort of the emotional aspect of going through all that? What was your initial entry into Athletes in Action? And did it translate onto the court at all in terms of that faith in sports?
Yeah, actually, when I was at Duke, I had really good seniors. 2 of them that I'm still close to with this day, Joy Cheek and Bridget Mitchell. And they were, the kind of ones that put me onto Bible study. We had the football chaplain who was running a small Bible study section with the athletes. And so I was kind of involved there at Duke. And when I got to San Diego State and somebody introduced me to Athletes in Action, it was kind of just a no-brainer to join. I was still learning about myself, learning about, being a Christian, growing up as a Christian. Sometimes you're just doing it because, your family wants you to. So I feel like when I got...
Okay, it's the same in the Jewish community, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I believed in God, and I knew there was a higher power, and I know that, I have somebody that's always watching over for me, but I don't really feel like I got into it until I was at San Diego State. And now I'm constantly going to Bible study. I'm around other athletes that are just like me. I've had all kinds of hardship and adversity. Even going to San Diego State and getting completely healthy, I actually tore my meniscus again.
Oh my gosh.
My kidney. So I had 3 meniscus tears in a 2.5-year period. So even transferring, getting healthy, going to San Diego State, being the girl from Duke, I ended up getting hurt again. So my faith at times was really, all I had. I didn't really know, like, is basketball for me anymore? Like, it's stuff I would have to pray and talk to God about, and even be mad with God. Like, why me? Like, why do you keep doing this? Are you trying to tell me like basketball's over or what? Like, I need a sign. So I'm, reading my Bible study and listening to I actually joined a church in San Diego State, the Rock Church. They used to actually hold that church at San Diego State, like early on, but then they ended up having their own church, like breaking away. So I kind of just, got into the word and got into my faith. And that's kind of just, I don't know where I would be, if those things didn't happen.
So you don't hear a lot about that. Is that happening under the scenes in terms of student athletes really connecting with their faith? Is it something that's not necessarily brought out in the media because it's not necessarily the cool thing to do? Or is there, it seems like there's moments, look, only 5 people get to be on the court at one time. There's lots of people transferring, as you said, different challenges. People are the best in high school. They get to college. They're not the best or the 6th, 7th, 8th person. How much of faith is happening on those, on the courts, in the locker rooms, and just within the team?
Well, at San Diego State, it was huge for us. Like, I would say, a good portion of our team, maybe there's 13 people on scholarship, and like at one point in time, like 7 of us are going to Athletes in Action. Like, our whole team was pretty much immersed in it. And the cool thing about Athletes in Action is it's from different sports. So we would have football guys in there, we would have a couple basketball guys in there, but our team definitely had a heavy presence. And I think that kind of, in a small sense for me, I feel like that contributed to some of our success. Like, we were able to lean on each other, pray with each other, fight through adversity when it hit. And I think a lot of people could use, groups like that. And I don't know how accessible it was to other people, but I know for me personally that I couldn't have done without it.
So we talked about the Christian faith, obviously athletes in action. What did you know about the Jewish community growing up in Vegas, to Duke, to San Diego State? Was it just something that like was sort of outside your realm? Did you know anybody who was Jewish growing up? What did that look like?
I don't think I knew anybody that was Jewish growing up, but I knew Danielle Diamant, who connected me and you. We and her played together at a young age. I think
for those of you who don't know, that's Jerry Tarkanian's granddaughter also, but she has her own credibility in the basketball world as well.
But I don't think I knew Danny was probably Jewish until she became a citizen in Israel and got a passport and, kind of later on in our lives or whatever. But just growing up, I knew the Jewish community had a lot of similarities to, Christianity, put it that way. So I knew that, there was some type of, connection there, but I don't really think I knew too much about it. Like I've been learning so much about just being in Israel, just learning about, Jewish faith and going to Shabbat dinners and all kinds of different things. I think as a kid, I just knew like, hey, don't the Jewish people wear the kippahs on top of their head? Like I think that's probably all that I knew at the time, but I've been learning more just several years here in Israel.
So let's go to graduating San Diego State. Lots of different options as a great basketball player. I know some stints in the WNBA, replacement player, 10-day contracts, etc. Europe has amazing basketball professionally for the women's game. How do you land up in Israel? Is it through an agent? You knew about Israel. What was the initial entry there that puts you in Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv and says, oh my gosh, I'm in this country that I thought was all war-torn. What's this about?
Yeah, so coming out of San Diego State, I wasn't drafted, but I got picked up. My coach actually set me up with an agent at the time, me and my other teammate. I got picked up by San Antonio, so that kind of kicked off my professional career. I was with them for like maybe a month. At the end of the season, they had somebody get hurt or whatever. But needless to say, my agent was just super big on Israel. She was like, hey, this is a great place to start, and let me tell you why. Everybody speaks English. The food is good. You'll be near other Americans. You've never been overseas before. So I want to put you in an environment where you can feel comfortable. And I think that that's going to kind of translate to how you play and how you perform. So that's kind of it. She was like, I'm going to get you to Israel. Everybody loves it there. This is a great place to start your career. And, next thing I know, I signed with Herzliya, and I was, coming from my little 30 days with the San Antonio Silver Stars, and I'm starting my, my rookie season over here.
So in your early 20s, you landed Ben Gurion Airport. What's that initial reaction when you look out the plane and you're like, oh my gosh, this is Israel? What was that like?
I really expected Israel to just all look like Jerusalem. So, like brick everywhere. Like, I don't know. Like, I really was thinking like, dang, Israel's going to be like straight out the Bible. Like, things aren't going to really look super modern. Like, I don't really know what I thought. But then like, once you finally get, I get to the airport, I get outside, we're driving from Ben Gurion Airport to Herzliya, which is, 50 minutes away. I'm driving through Tel Aviv and I'm like, this is normal. They have normal buildings and normal, everything looks, pretty normal and modern. So I guess that was the first thing that kind of like, took me off guard. But yeah, I guess I really didn't know what to expect.
And what was your parents' reaction in terms of, oh my gosh, no, you can't go there, or yes, go there? Have they been there? What's been their reaction?
So I had never been here initially when I first started my career. And, I think they had some, reservations certainly about me coming. As an American, if you've never been to Israel and you like watch CNN, then you think like, oh, Middle East, like bombs and rockets are being, shot all over the place and it's not safe there. And, they think, about ISIS and terrorists and all these different kinds of things. And they know about the, the Palestinian conflict, that you guys are like in a war every day, but it's really not like that. So I told my parents like, hey, I know you guys are sad and worried, but I'm going because I'm about to play basketball. So this is what we're going to do. And, I finally got their blessing, and now my mom loves Israel. I've been here for 8 years and my mom has been here for 6. Literally every year she would come for a month at a time, two a month. This year, probably not so much because of COVID. Last year, actually, I had a flight booked and she was going to be on her way and the season got canceled. So she's been here and she loves it. And actually my dad, who had never been anywhere besides Mexico, came to Israel to visit me twice as well. So now they love it here and they see it's normal and they feel comfortable knowing that I'm out here.
So let's go off the basketball court for a moment, talking about the Jerusalem, the Nazareth. What's a place, connected to the athletes in action and Bible study. Here you study the word, you study scripture, and all of a sudden you're walking the places where those things happen. Some people say, no, that stuff cannot have happened. And all of a sudden you're playing basketball in the places where those happen, right? Something that Abraham and Jesus probably wouldn't have thought of, that this girl from Vegas one day was going to go back to the Holy Land and, play a sport like that. Take us off the court and some interesting Israel experiences that you've had that have connected you to your faith.
I mean, it's just surreal. Like, just going to Jerusalem, I remember for the first time and seeing the Western Wall, and like Jerusalem actually kind of reminds me of just what I pictured the Bible and what I pictured Israel to be like I told you previously. But even just going to the Dead Sea, like, these are all biblical things that I've read about that I never imagined that I would actually get to experience. And then just being there and knowing that Jesus was here and different, biblical historical events have occurred is just kind of like mind blowing. So I got to do, visit these places like 10 times over now. So maybe it's not as surreal to me as it was, but I just remember when I first got here, like, wow, this is incredible. And, God has put me in a position to experience this stuff and see this stuff. And, sometimes you can't even imagine it,
So I'm going to share my screen right now and show a quick video that I believe on Israel TV about your experience in Israel. And we'll talk about that in just one moment. This is Chelsea Hopkins, Benot Ashdod, Israeli MVP in the land of Israel. And here we go.
Playing overseas is challenging, but according to Chelsea, Israel is easier than other places.
Israel is amazing. I think that's why I've been here so long. It was just really cool how the transition was kind of smooth. Like, besides being really far away from home, like everybody speaks English here. The food is really good. It's kind of easy to maneuver. It's kind of like being in the States, I guess, as close as you can get to it, as opposed to some of these other countries like Russia and Turkey.
And she's picked up some local habits along the way.
When you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. So it's not the best habit. When I got to Israel, picked up hookah a little bit.
But practice is intense and expectations high. Benot Ashdod have won the championship 5 years in a row, but are currently behind in the standings. So I decided to give Chelsea a bit of an extra workout.
I had the chance to play a one-on-one game with Chelsea. Let's say it didn't go too well.
Despite being Jewish, Ariel says it's Chelsea who helps her figure Israel out.
I don't know how it was for her first season here, but seeing.
So take us on the court now. What is it like to play Israeli basketball with Hebrew in the huddle? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Well, actually, my teammates get a kick out of me because I want to speak Hebrew and try, and I say little random things. And I actually have done much better actually understanding it just because I hear it so much now. But can I have a full blown conversation? Absolutely not. But the great thing about here is that most of the coaches and all the players, they all speak English. So you don't really have to hear Hebrew. You mostly hear Hebrew when the coaches are yelling at the Israeli players. But for the most part, just
when they don't want you to understand what they're saying, right?
Yeah, it could be that, or they just are very passionate, and it's easier for them to say it in Hebrew than it is to say it in front of us.
You have a favorite Hebrew phrase or favorite Hebrew word?
Manishma. I say that to my teammates all the time, and they just think it's so funny because I don't say it probably correctly. But
and what about some Israeli culture? Favorite food or restaurant in Tel Aviv?
Okay, so my favorite restaurant is a little street restaurant.
Nice.
It's called Miznon in Tel Aviv, and they have shawarma with different. You can get steak and eggs inside of it, or any type of meat you can possibly think of. They have these big heads of cauliflower that you just just eat with your hands, and it's really, it's like fast food, but it's really cool, and it's my favorite. But I like falafel and shawarma and shakshuka. My friends make for me all the time, so all that stuff is good to me.
So on your Facebook and Twitter, you actually quote about God often. I just want to read a couple of quotes that I saw, and just like I said, you're open about your faith, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's not something that you hide, and how you connect that with sports. You said, actually right here, sometimes we ask God to change our situation, but maybe God wants the situation to change us, right? I'm going to say that again. Sometimes we ask God to change our situation. You said before, I pray for this, I pray for that. And we know that prayer is not just about asking for things, because if we ask God for something and God didn't give it to us, does that mean that God didn't listen to our prayers, right? But you like nail it on the head. You said, no, maybe God wants the situation to change us, right? Tell me a little bit about this and how you can understand that when you're in a difficult situation, it's our responsibility to understand that it's up to us, right? God wants us to change and not asking God to change us.
Yeah, no,
I love
absolutely.
that quote.
I just think, timing is everything. And, just as people and being human, we want things when we want it now, or we don't understand why something is happening, whether it's an injury or why I didn't stay on this WNBA team, or why am I not in the WNBA anymore and I'm playing overseas. And, I've had a lot of instances in my life where I've just kind of not questioned God, but just questioned like, what's going on here? Like, God has to be trying to show me something because I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm whatever. And, but sometimes you're put in these situations because God wants you to respond a certain way, or maybe he wants you to experience it because he's preparing you for something else that he has better. And that's just my mindset. Like I've been injured, I've been hurt, I've been down, I've been broken, I've been, full of tears and full of joy. There's been so many times where it's just been like a roller coaster. And I just have come to the realization that everything happens for a reason. Like God is, testing me sometimes, for something greater, or for even in that moment, because he needs me to be prepared for my next situation. And that's kind of just how I approach stuff. And that's where I get these little, and I don't even know if that quote, I doubt I made that quote up. I probably read it somewhere. But
No, you said another thing. You said what you pray for. You said, every time I fell down, you lifted me back up. I pray you continue to give me peace when frustration creeps in, and the strength to keep going after that. At the end of each book of the Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah, and the Jewish tradition, we say 3 words. We say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. It means be strong, v'nit chazek, and together we will be strengthened. And it reminds me exactly what you said. There's going to be times when we're beaten down. We got meniscus tears, we got contracts broken, all that stuff. But chazak, that idea of strength, and that if we have that strength, then we will be able to keep going as well. So speaking of those next steps, you mentioned the business degree, you mentioned salutatorian, your academics are really important, and you understood back then that was going to also propel you after your basketball career. What are those next steps with, you said perhaps going to an NBA executive office?
Yeah, so actually that's my dream. I can't imagine not being immersed in basketball in some way. Like I understand, like, the ball has to stop bouncing at some point. You can't always be a player. Like obviously that's clear. But, basketball has always been a huge part of my life. And, it's done so much for me. I just want to find a way that I can give back. And I don't really, although people tell me like they think I'd be a great coach just because I'm super passionate and fiery and always yelling and trying to motivate people. But I don't really see myself doing that. I studied business and got my master's because I took an interest in business. So I would love to transition over to the administrative side and just, work for an NBA team. That's my dream. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Vegas gets an NBA team so I won't have to, stray too far from home. But I want to work in a front office. It's my dream to be a general manager and, put a team together and, deal with the salary cap and who's making what and who deserves this. And, I'm totally into that kind of stuff. So I've met some pretty good people throughout my career, and they feel like they can, put me in positions to hopefully accomplish that. So that's definitely my next goal.
So I want to talk about actually you being an African-American playing basketball in Israel, and obviously through the NBA and even college sports this year, it's not just last names on a jersey anymore. Lots of people saying equality and justice and just lots of different messages coming out through the sports world. What's your feeling about using sports as that avenue and, if you wish, platform to, in Hebrew we say tikkun olam, to make this world a better place? Has that translated in Israel in terms of sports and justice really coming together? And just would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I'd say I don't know so much about in Israel, but I really like what I see from these players and the current trend, I guess, with just social justice reform and stuff and how it's been immersed with sports. I feel like, forget just being an athlete. If you have a platform at any moment, you should be able to share what you believe and fight for what you think is right. And, and I kind of like that, people are stepping up for things that they see that they're not okay with. And, other people can feel the same way, and they may not be, LeBron James, who's on TV all the time and having the opportunity to, to make a comment. So I think it's really important And that goes back to God just putting you in positions to be able to, reach other people. Like, I think if the athletes and a lot of these different things, how would you get the word out otherwise? How would people that maybe don't have certain people around them and they kind of live in a bubble and don't see these different things that are happening, around the world, who would speak to those people otherwise? So I think it's really cool that, these athletes are stepping up and fighting for what they believe in. And even necessarily if you don't always, like how somebody's doing it, my advice is just to at least try to, receive the message. And I think we've seen that with, Colin Kaepernick and his kneeling, and a lot of people took offense to that. And I understand everybody, feels certain ways about certain things, but the biggest thing that we can do to help each other is to listen. And if I'm telling you that this bothers me, like, you should be able to respect that at the very least. So I'm very proud of what I've seen from the athletes, in the NBA and the WNBA, who I felt like has led the charge tremendously with just a lot of these things that's been happening. You don't really see it too much in Israel, but you definitely see the equality, not racial equality aspect, but just equality between women and men in sports. I mean, that's, everywhere, like between the pay gap and just the support. And, you see the guys in the NBA are making, hundreds of millions of dollars, and here the, max salary in the WNBA is $200,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's not necessarily, that, there's other factors that play into, why people make money and this and that. But, we just have to hear, I think making the world a better place is just hearing people out, hearing their concerns, being open to why they feel a certain way, and what can we do to help change that or help everybody feel more comfortable. And that's kind of what it boils down to for me. So
is there a message that you have really used that platform of basketball to try and get out, either to the Jewish community, to the Israeli community, to the sports world? Is there something that I
haven't really done anything personally out here, but what I will say, which I've really appreciated, is just my teammates and just the Israelis that I've been around in basketball. They understand. Like, I have talks, with my teammates, and they're like, yo, why is there school shootings in the States? Why, are these officers killing these unarmed Black people? Like, to them, it's kind of like unheard of. Like, wow, this will never happen in Israel. An officer can't just shoot somebody. And, so we have these kind of talks, and like, just to see how receptive and how like, willing and wanting to learn about, what we experience, to me, is what I appreciate the most. Like, hey, you're never going to experience it. You may never understand, but you want to. And so I don't think that there's anything that I've really particularly done here besides have conversations. But I definitely just respect that they understand that there's a fight that's bigger than basketball. And, we're doing other things, back home that may be foreign to them, but it's necessary. And this is kind of what we have to do.
So you just said just have conversations, but the just is the most important thing, because I think so many people don't even have conversations, right?
Yeah.
Somebody says that the court is the great equalizer, and I think that's so true. I mean, there's no other way that you and I would have connected if it was besides my passion for the sport and what you do, and now connection to the land of Israel. And then who knows, where we can go from there. To conclude this morning, or I guess this evening, Alayla Tov in Israel, is there a message actually to our young people in terms of, a lot of people say, and I told this to my guest last week as well, former college basketball player. Every 13-year-old comes into my office before their bar mitzvah. Have you been to a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, 2 weeks in a row. We got to invite you all to a bar mitzvah. It's the best.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I would definitely be down to go.
I'll send you our YouTube link for the bar mitzvah this week.
Okay.
But all these kids say, what do you want to do when you get older? And they all say, I want to play in the NBA. I want to be a professional basketball player, right? It's hard to do that. There's a very small percentage of people that actually do that. But what is the message to our young people that they can take sports and make it a positive impact in their life while not throwing out the aspect of faith that you continue to have, and it seems like also continues to grow within you as well? What's that message to the young people?
Well, I always tell young people, like, you can do anything that you set your mind to. As long as along the way you stay true to yourself, then that's your morals, your beliefs. None of that stuff has to go out the window because you want to play basketball. But the biggest thing is just when you're along your journey, just understand that it's your journey. And yeah, you may have an end goal that you want to reach, but you're going to learn so many lessons along the way. You may be derailed. You may go in a different direction or something that you didn't plan. But the biggest thing is just staying with it. Like, I don't think anybody's really had a perfect story where everything happened exactly how they wanted to. So I always tell kids, like, hey, if this doesn't happen, okay, something else may happen later that may be even better, that you didn't expect, that you never know. But I always encourage kids, like, go all in on what you feel like you want to do, what's your dream, and what you believe in, and it can take you such a long way.
Actually, it's interesting you say that, because in the Torah portion this week, throughout the whole world, we're reading about the splitting of the Red Sea. Have you been to Eilat in the south?
Yes, I have been.
Yeah. So when you stand in Eilat, you actually see the Red Sea, right? You've probably gone, what's it called, jet skiing or whatever, or snorkeling.
You were like on those tubes, and it was really cool.
Yeah. So that is the connection of all Jews around the world are going to read about the splitting of the Red Sea. And the miracle actually is not that, the split. Number one, people think that Moses put his staff in the sea and it split. But actually, our tradition says that there was somebody, his name was Nachshon, and he was the first person that put his foot in the sea. Somebody had to do it first, right? It actually wasn't Moses. And the miracle, not that the sea split, but the miracle is that you and I are sitting here in 2021 and you're in Tel Aviv and I'm in Los Angeles, and we're still talking about that. And it's just what you said, that the journey continues, that there's always flaws, that there's always challenges. But as you said earlier, the strength to pray that we will have peace when frustration creeps in, and the strength to keep going after that is actually the miracle. I think that's the miracle that has brought us together on this episode here as well. So we want to thank you for joining us on Rabbi on the Sidelines. Next week, we are honored to have a college basketball analyst, Andy Katz, with us. Andy is formerly of ESPN, now of the Big Ten Network, has done the March Madness 365, has done the brackets, as you can see on your screen, with President Barack Obama during his years in office. We're excited to have Andy on as well. We're also excited to continue our connection with Chelsea Hopkins, Israeli professional basketball players, and sports figures around the world. Chelsea, we want to thank you. We want to say Toda Rabba. We want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I know also it's Tu B'Shvat, the holiday of the trees. So if you see some awesome trees out there in Israel, give them our regards and blessings as well. And it's just wonderful to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you so much. I'm just happy to be here.
Yes, my pleasure. Rabbi on the Sidelines, live from Sinai Temple, every Thursday at 10 a.m. We look forward to seeing you next week with Andy Katz. Have a great day, everybody.